Hey lady, welcome to the Grit, Growth, Grace podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie. I'm wife to James and mom to 4 beautiful kids, plus 1 miscarried baby, from 9 months up to 8 years. My hope is to help other women experience the postpartum period all the way up to the first year of baby's life as a time of grit, growth, and grace. This is episode 7. Hey lady, last week we talked about what to do with all the things you can't control, looking at your scripts, the stories you tell yourself when things are hard. Now, not every mom deals with colic or reflux or mastitis, but every mom has experience with sleep deprivation to some extent and for some length of time. I said in the intro episode of this podcast that I'm not here to teach you or tell you how to care for your baby, but how to care for you. The only piece of information I'll offer on sleep training is this. There are programs and courses and books aplenty out there, enough to overwhelm any parent. Each time we have a baby, I personally forget that trying to feed them every hour of the day with the expectation that they'll sleep longer at night is not the way. This most recent postpartum blog post on the website Taking Cara Babies, Cara Babies, were helpful for reminding me of wake windows and the cycle of baby nursing or feeding, being awake briefly, and then sleeping. So for whatever that's worth, I liked Taking Cara Babies this last time around. All right, back to regularly scheduled programming. The first thing I'd love for you to consider is your personal sleep temperament. Are those even a thing? They are, according to Jen Fulwiler, a stand-up comedian, mom of 6, and author of Your Blue Flame, Drop the Guilt and Do What Makes You Come Alive. I'm going to read her words on this subject directly to you because she says it best herself. In Your Blue Flame, she wrote, I always assumed if I tried hard enough, I could force myself to be a morning person. After all, that schedule works wonderfully for most people I know. After 20 years of trying and failing, one day I decided to accept that being a night owl is simply how I'm wired. Maybe this makes me weird, but I'm never going to thrive on an early to bed, early to rise schedule. Admitting this is one of the most life-changing decisions I ever made. But the sleep revelations didn't stop there. As I experimented with sleep patterns that work for me and asked my friends about what works for them, I came to believe that there are a few key things that each one of us must understand about our relationship to sleep, such as how long it takes us to fall asleep, how easily we are awoken, and so on. When you add all these factors together, you have your sleep temperament type. Just as knowing your Myers-Briggs type can help you understand your strengths and weaknesses, knowing your sleep type can help you make informed decisions about how and when you rest. I'm going to read that again. Just as knowing your Myers-Briggs type can help you understand your strengths and weaknesses, knowing your sleep type can help you make informed decisions about how and when you rest. This is Jen's words again. After conducting the highly sophisticated research of personal experience and a few long comment threads on Instagram, I came up with this taxonomy for sleep temperament. E, easily falls asleep, or H, hard to fall asleep, says the first letter. Second, stays asleep well, S, or D, sleep disturbed easily. Third letter, morning person, M, or N for night owl. And fourth letter, very tired without sufficient sleep, T for tired, or F, can function fine without sufficient sleep. I've commissioned peer-reviewed scientific studies, read group texts that have proven this classification system to be accurate. I am an HSNF. This means that most of the conventional wisdom about sleep ruins my life. For example, when my kids were babies, people said I should sleep when the baby sleeps. I am not exaggerating when I say that I heard this advice at least once a week. So I tried it. Because of that H, hard to fall asleep, I would have just drifted off as the baby woke up. The S, stays asleep well, would ensure that it felt like I was awakening from being cryogenically frozen. The N for night owl meant that my body would register the 5-minute nap as a signal to be wide awake all night long. And the F for can function fine without sufficient sleep is the only reason I didn't blow up the world. Still Jen's words here. If you're an EDMT, easily falls asleep, sleep disturbed easily, morning person, and very tired without sufficient sleep, don't let the night owls tell you it's glamorous to stay up all hours of the night and then power through with coffee the next day. If you're an HDMT, hard to fall asleep, sleep disturbed easily, morning person, and very tired without sufficient sleep, don't apologize for needing to be in bed way longer than other people you know. If your third letter is a strong N, like mine, and your body also hits the turbo button just before midnight, accept that you're not doing yourself or anyone else a favor by setting your alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so that's the end of the quote. Once you know your sleep temperament, I'd love for you to lazy genius your postpartum sleep. I'm going to tell you what this looks like for me, and I'd love for you to take exactly what serves you and hit snooze on everything else. When we brought my firstborn, my son, home from the hospital, we started out with him sleeping in our room, because that's what they tell you, right? Your baby needs to sleep in your room. I quickly learned 2 things. 1, my babies are noisy, grunty, groany, moany little sleepers. Yes, even when they are fully asleep. And 2, since during postpartum, my first letter is H for hard to fall asleep, and D, second letter, for sleep disturbed easily, their grunty little noises prevent me from falling asleep. And if I happen to be drifting off, they will wake me right back up. So at several days old, we kicked my son out of our room. He slept in his bassinet in the hallway, which, with the noise from my fan, is far enough away that I couldn't hear his grunts, but I could hear him cry when he woke up and wanted to eat. You might recall that our second child, my daughter, had a tumultuous first week on Earth, complete with surgery and a NICU stay. So when she came home, I figured we'd try having her in the room with us, just in case. Mind you, she'd never had apnea problems or breathing or heart troubles, and she'd passed all of her screening tests with flying colors. But that first night back, she was grunting and groaning and moaning over there in the pack-and-play napper, so out she went into the hallway too. We didn't even try anything else with these last 2 boys. They have gone into the napper and the pack-and-play at the end of the hallway, which is about 15 feet from our room, straight away. You know, the other thing I think has made some difference for us. Our big kids aren't allowed in our bed. I fully recognize that this is sacrilege to some, and this some may include you, dear lady, but I'm going to say it, and you get to decide whether it's relevant or irrelevant to your family. Growing up, neither my husband's parents nor my own allowed kids in their bed. If we had a nightmare, we could sleep on our comforter at the foot of their bed until morning, but their physical bed was off limits to us. I learned as I grew up that other kids slept in their parents' beds, and here's what I've observed. Generally, it's the mom who spearheads this initiative, and in the families I've known who've done this, the dad has not loved it, but he has put up with it. But while the mom seems to want this situation, I consistently hear that she doesn't sleep well. If this happens to be you, where you have a baby or older kid or kid sleeping in your bed, but you are sleeping poorly, I invite you to consider whether you'd like to change something or nothing. I want you to know you get to decide this, what makes sense for you and for your spouse. There's something else I want to talk about briefly too, and it's who gets up in the middle of the night when the baby wakes up. Is it fair that you're the only one to get up with baby in the middle of the night? Now, when you're sleep deprived, logic is not usually top of mind. So here are a few questions for you to consider to lazy genius who gets up in the middle of the night. And just as a reminder, to lazy genius something just means you decide, do I want to be lazy about this, meaning this is not something that matters to me, or I want to be a genius about this. This is something that matters a lot, and I want to pay attention and be very strategic with it. So, question number 1. Who does better on less sleep? The fact of the matter is, in my marriage, I tend to do better on less sleep than my husband does. That's just the way it is. I can either be really angry and pissy and upset about how unfair that is, or I can say, this is a strength that I have been given, and I can lean into that strength and be strategic about it. Question number 2, are you breastfeeding, bottle feeding, or a combination? Right, because there's some more play in this if you are bottle feeding and maybe your husband can get up a time or 2 at night with the baby, as opposed to you being the one to feed the baby every single time. Question number 3, is it important to you that one of you be relatively more well-rested? When my oldest was born, my husband would get up when he cried, go get him, bring him to me in bed, wait till I was done feeding him, and go put him back in the bassinet. But here's the thing. Then we were both equally exhausted. So since then, with subsequent babies, what we've decided is that I get up, I go feed the baby. When he's done, or she, I put them back in bed, I come back to bed. Generally speaking, my husband doesn't get up. Now, this works well in our family because then we have one of us who has, relatively speaking, a little bit more rest under their belt when the sun comes up and all of our other kids are ready to hit the ground running. When we had just one child, it didn't matter that much that my husband was up and he was helping, and then we were both tired during the day because there was nobody else to take care of other than this baby. But with older kids, we found it works better for me to be the one to get up at night and him to have, relatively speaking, more rest during the day. And that's also been important when he has gone back to work as well, that he be a little bit more well rested during that time. So these are just things for you to be thinking about. And I'd love for you to consider them strategically instead of being stuck in the cycle of, this is not fair, this is annoying, why doesn't he do more, and just being angry about it. I'd love for you to look at some questions and think about how you want to approach this purposefully. The last thing I want to address is your bedtime routine. The alternate title of this section would be, Why I Wear Perfume to Bed. I'd love for you to go to bed around the same time every night, lady. Not just to put your baby down around the same time, but for you to go down around the same time. And you might be thinking, Anne-Marie, I'm going to be up in 2 hours anyway. What's the point? Here's the point. When you are in a routine, whether like Jen Fulweiler, you go to bed quite late, or like me, you go to bed much earlier, your brain begins to know what to expect based on your behavioral cues. Especially during this time when stretches of sleep may be hard to come by, let's make every minute of sleep count of the highest possible quality. During postpartum, part of my routine is that I borrow wind-down books from the library. Wind-down books are books you'd buy for your coffee table if you wanted to spend $40 a pop making yourself look fancy. So I borrow mine from the library. I choose a theme each postpartum, and as I'm going to sleep, I'll look at those coffee table books to avoid artificial light exposure from being on my phone right before I go to sleep, and also to relax me. One postpartum period, I got flower arranging books. 2 times ago, I got personal style books. So I got one book that I already had, and then I just went through her entire suggested reading list at the end of the book. Though I did find out that advanced style does refer to women over the age of 65. This past time, I read all about, mostly looked at, all things charcuterie boards. It's lovely. Reading wind-down books is part of my bedtime routine postpartum. I also wear perfume to bed. Yes, to bed. I own exactly 2 perfumes. One I wear out of the house, and the other I wear to bed. I wear perfume to bed because I've told myself it's fancy. But also, that's become a behavioral cue for my brain. I'm putting on my bedtime perfume along with my bedtime chapstick. And while I'm laying my vanity out on the table for you, I'll tell you that I thought of filming my bedtime application of perfume and chapstick and my face lotion and my body lotion and posting it to Instagram. Because you see that kind of thing all the time, right? But here's the thing. I don't know how to make that look cool and not ridiculous. And my Bath & Body Works nighttime lavender lotion is almost gone, so I have to unscrew the pump top lid and shake it a bunch of times to get anything come out. So that's not exactly glamorous, but it's my routine. I apply my goop and spray my perfume and read for a couple minutes and sometimes journal, especially early on, usually journal my successes, my gratitudes for a couple minutes, say my prayers, and go to bed. I'd love for you to consider what you'd like your own routine to look like, but here's the important part. The important part is that you know you are not a victim to your baby's sleeping. Even though you can't control how long your baby sleeps, these different things, those aren't in your control. You still get to decide how you're going to respond, and you have options in terms of your routine, where the baby sleeps. You are not a victim. You can make choices that are good for you, good for your baby, for your spouse, for your family, and you're not married to the choices once you make them. You are a smart, rational, reasonable lady, and you can figure out, we've been doing this, but it actually isn't working for us. We're going to try this other thing instead. You get to do that. You get to decide what matters most to you, and if you determine something isn't working, you can pivot and try something else. Okay, that's it for sleep deprivation, at least for now. I can imagine there will be another episode in the future on this topic because it's a big one. Next time, lady, we're going to talk postpartum uniforms, just for fun. I can't wait. I'll talk to you then. One more thing. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please rate the podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts? and share it with a mom friend. And if you want to get in touch, my Instagram account is @GritGrowthGrace.